So, today we're going to dive into a really personal story about resilience. It's all pulled from a dad's diary, which he found a year after being laid off. It's just this raw, incredible look at how we navigate huge setbacks and, find strength in the little things to write our own comeback story. And it all kicks off with this single line. It's written almost a full year after everything went down. And that one sentence, it just perfectly captures that strange feeling when a huge crisis starts to feel like a distant memory, something you can finally look back on. So to be clear, this is him now, on August 16th, 2025, looking back. He's literally rereading his own journal from those first few brutal days of unemployment. It gives us this amazing side-by-side view of his journey. And this, right here, is the whole point. What was once just raw pain, shock, and this constant, nagging anxiety, well, with a little time, it's transformed. It's not just a bad memory anymore. It's actually a source of strength. It's become a great story. Okay, so let's rewind the clock. We're jumping back in time to just 8 days after the layoff. Let's see what that new reality actually felt like, straight from the pages of his journal.
So it's his second weekend being unemployed. You'd think it would be all crisis mode, right? But life just doesn't stop. He writes about having to go out and buy HVAC filters for the house. I mean, can you imagine? It's this completely surreal mix of crushing life-altering anxiety and just the simple, boring need to keep the house running.
And in the middle of all this chaos, he starts turning to his hobbies. And these weren't just simple distractions, They were anchors. They were the few things in his life that he could actually control when everything else felt like it was completely spiraling. And you can see these two opposing forces laid out so clearly here. On one side, you have these massive, life-altering stressors, unemployment, job hunting, just the pressure of being a dad. And on the other side, fantasy basketball, Pokémon collecting, and running. It's such a perfect picture of how these small, manageable passions can somehow balance out the most overwhelming pressures. Let's take the fantasy basketball league. For him, this was way more than just a game. It was like a challenge he set for himself. Could he still be a good, present dad, hunt for jobs all day, and keep that competitive fire that was such a huge part of his identity? It was all about proving to himself that he could still win at something. And then you've got his Pokémon collection. He's totally honest in his diary that it was really more for his own enjoyment than for his son's. It was this small, tangible goal he could set for himself, work towards, and actually achieve. A little win. But of course, right behind that little moment of joy comes the guilt. He's unemployed. He knows every single dollar counts. You can almost hear that little voice in his head, nagging him, telling him he should be saving, not spending. But then, boom, he immediately follows it up with this. He just decides that the small investment in his own sanity, his own well-being, was worth way more than the few bucks he spent. It's such a great reminder that sometimes these little joys aren't a luxury, they're an absolute necessity. So as if all of that wasn't enough, while he was fighting all these internal battles, he was also facing this massive physical challenge, one that he had committed to months before he even knew a layoff was coming. He was supposed to be training for his first ever 10K race, but the month leading up to it was just pure chaos. Look at this timeline. It was just one thing after another, and it all ends with him getting sick and laid off in the very same week. His training was completely, totally derailed. So before this whole mess started, 8 kilometers was the farthest he'd ever run in his life. That was his absolute peak. But this was the goal, 10 kilometers. After a month of being sick, getting injured, and the shock of losing his job, that extra 2-kilometer gap must have felt like a freaking marathon. Okay, so let's jump back to the present day. After all that struggle, where did he land a year later? This is where we really get to see the payoff. Here we go. The results are in. He won that fantasy basketball league, proving to himself he never lost his edge. He finished that Pokémon set, a small but really important personal win. And yep, against all odds, he conquered that 10K race. But here's the kicker. the part that I find absolutely incredible, that terrifying 10K, it wasn't the finish line. It was the starting pistol. He just kept going. He did another race, and now he's actually training for a half marathon. The challenge he was dreading became the very thing that sparked this massive personal growth. And he's totally upfront about it. He admits he still hates running. So why do it? Well, his reason is so powerful. He does it to force himself to do hard things. It's like he's training for life, building this discipline that makes him appreciate everything else so much more. You know, this whole story is just a beautiful reminder that in our most uncertain times, it's often the small, personal anchors that give us the strength to just keep moving forward. The hobbies, the tiny goals we set for ourselves, the self-imposed challenges. It really makes you stop and wonder, what are yours?